and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Spritz, and I am your host, and this week, the Spritz Nipper will be Tuesday. Tuesday is the Nipper.
And I'm Matt Weatherman, but I don't have a meteorology degree.
Well, of course not, because then you would be Matt Meteorology degree.
That's true, yeah.
This week on the show, our 10-part series, Deconstructing Verbinski, continues as the director takes a brief break from Pirates of the Caribbean to direct 2005's The Weatherman. So we're going to be talking all about this small film. This is actually, Matt, Verbinski's smallest budget film in his career, is this one right here.
Yeah. I'm sure we're going to talk about like maybe why he wanted to do this at this point.
Sure, yeah, definitely. Then we're going to talk about how movies are back, baby. The theaters are coming back in a big way. It's the summer, and the summer movie season is in full swing. And we're going to talk about going back to theaters.
It's a big deal.
And then I am going to wrap this thing up by telling you why you and everyone else should probably go see Cruella for some reason.
Okay, man. All right, if you say so.
It's going to be fun. But first, let's get into our main topic of the week and talk about The Weatherman.
This wind system will keep pushing colder air across the Midwest. Our Spritz Nipper of the week, just 24.
I don't like his face.
I like him. He's handsome.
My job's very easy. 2 hours a day, basically reading prompts.
Hey, Weatherman!
Every couple months, someone throws something at me. I receive a large reward for pretty much zero effort and contribution. The shakes and stuff are a reaction to that, I think.
Why would someone throw a shake at you? You just read the weather.
Matt, what is The Weatherman all about?
A Chicago weatherman, separated from his wife and children, debates whether professional and personal success are mutually exclusive.
I hate that summary.
That's not what the movie's about. That's not like most of the words in that summary are wrong.
I mean, he is a Chicago weatherman. He is separated from his wife and children.
He's not separated from his children.
Well, that's true. He's separated from his wife.
Separated from his wife. So a Chicago weatherman separated from his wife.
The end.
Scott, this is a very unusual movie, isn't it?
It is. This movie was written by Stephen Conrad, who also wrote The Pursuit of Happiness. I don't know if you remember that film. That's a Will Smith film. He is a little boy.
I remember it exists, but I've never actually seen it.
And also The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I don't know if you remember that movie.
I do.
It was, of course, directed by Gore Verbinski, and it stars Nick Cage, Michael Caine, and a very young Nicholas Hoult. It was good to see little young Nicholas Hoult playing Nick Cage's son in this movie.
Huh. I forgot that he grows up and becomes someone else.
So, okay, Matt, what do you think of The Weatherman?
Oh, this is a great movie. It's I don't know what to do with it in context of the Deconstructing Verbinski saga that we're embarking upon. It just feels so different from everything he's done. It's this small little movie right after he did Pirates of the Caribbean. Out of all of the movies we've done on any of our Deconstructing Directors series, this is the one where I'm most just like, why this movie? like it's got almost no action whatsoever. It's really just a character drama, a very slow paced and deliberate character study. It's got some of the best of Nick Cage. Absolutely great. I think we're probably going to talk about Nick Cage for at least 95% of this conversation.
Definitely.
And I don't know. I'm just sort of trying to figure out where to place this movie.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think one of the struggles we've been having throughout the series is something that we did not have at all with our previous director, Guillermo del Toro, which is, taking these movies and defining a man by them. And I think it's partially because del Toro wrote all his own films too, and Verbinski does not do this. But even so, even the directors that didn't write all their movies like Fincher, their styles were very consistent. The type of stories they like to explore are very consistent. And I think that the word I'm landing on with Gore Verbinski now is chameleon. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because we're going to be talking about Rango in a few weeks, but I think every one of these movies has him been kind of exploring a different thing. And I mean, we talked about him doing a horror film. We talked about him doing an adventure film. We talked about him doing a comedy. This movie feels like he's channeling completely different directors. This feels like a Jim Jarmusch movie. This kind of feels like a Sofia Coppola movie. It feels like this very focused character study film that he's never made before. And he's not directing it like a Gore Verbinski film. He's directing it like a different type of person. Like one of the things I really paid attention to in this watch is, I talked last week about Pirates glowingly about how Verbinski's camera is always on the move in that film. It's always moving around. It's swooping and diving, and it helps, propel the action scenes forward. And it's not just those movies, though. He did this in The Ring. He did it in Mouse Hunt. He did it in The Mexican as well. This camera is very static. The scenes are very framed. The camera moves a little bit, but not too much. And it's like he's trying to do something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, there's lengthy parts of the movie that are like him staring out a window with the camera stationary on him, cutting between different angles of him just looking out a window, maybe with a voiceover happening. I think maybe it's interesting because I can't remember off the top of my head if there's any other voiceovers. I don't think there are.
Is there any in The Mexican? I think there is voiceover in The Mexican, but it's like diegetic voiceover, right? Because characters are telling stories to other characters.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of the time it's almost like he's avoiding distracting you from the voiceover, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Something like that. It's so funny because I feel like the bead that I had on him and what he was doing and the techniques he used has disappeared, which actually is really exciting. It's really exciting to think that like a director who has just made what you could call his career defining movie, his next movie is just like him, like you said, becoming a chameleon, mimicking completely different directors, or maybe this, I don't know if he's consciously mimicking them because I haven't read anything that would suggest that. It's more like you said, it feels like other movies that have nothing to do with the movies that he's done up till now.
Yeah, definitely. And I love it for it. I love this movie, and it's been forever since I've seen it. And actually, I mean, we'll probably get into this as we go through, but I forgot how important this movie was to me. It's so funny. Like you go through phases in your life, and I think when I first watched this movie, I think when it came out in 2005, I was 20 years old, and it just hit me in exactly the right place at the right time. And like a lot of the quotes from this movie, I have like written down as some of my favorite quotes. I think we'll talk about Michael Caine a lot, but his quote about, easy doesn't enter into adult life. To do anything of value, you have to sacrifice. Like that is a quote that like has registered with me in my entire life. And I think about it once a week. And for whatever reason, I totally forgot it was this movie. And so like revisiting this movie was like revisiting something that is so important to you. And it's like my heart opened to it. And I just was like, I was blown away by this movie on my revisit. Like I was, I love it. I love everything it's doing. It's right up my alley. I love voiceover. I love Nick Cage. I love these really deep character study movies. These are movies. I don't think they make movies like this anymore. I think if you wanted to tell this story in 2021, you would do it in like a 7-episode limited series type thing. Yeah. I don't think you make this movie anymore. And that makes me sad a little bit.
I mean, this movie grossed $12.5 million in the US on not opening weekend during its entire run.
Yeah.
So that's why they don't make movies like this anymore. And you're exactly right that they don't really. There was kind of an era, right, where this movie kind of feels very much like it's of that era.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I want to talk about some of the plot points of this movie with you since you loved it, and I really enjoy it. I think it's great. I think Nick Cage is great. I think Verbinski and Cage are like on the same exact wavelength, and they are bringing some magic to what's happening here. There are just certain things in the movie where I'm not clear on what I was meant to feel, and maybe if you can clear it up with me, it'll make me love the movie instead of just liking it a lot.
Sure, I'll try.
I mean, so like a specific thing I could mention. There's a couple things, but I think a specific thing would be like, when he when he goes to the house of the guy who is being inappropriate with his son, and he just assaults him and kicks his ass and yells at him and then leaves, and then he tells everyone after that, like, oh, it's all sorted out. Is that meant to be like a comedy beat, that it's obviously not sorted out because all he did was go and assault the guy? Or are we meant to think that that was him stepping up and that was actually a mature choice?
I don't think it's meant to be a comedy beat. I mean, I think it is certainly, I think in some level it's meant to be a comedy beat, in the same way that all the beats in this movie are comedic, in which they're like stilted and awkward and weird and uncomfortable. I don't, that is one thing I'm not sure about. I don't think that's meant to be seen, in my opinion, as him stepping up. I think here's the thing that I think Nick Cage is doing in this movie. I think he's a man that is obsessed with how he is perceived. And so every action he does is the big, broad, like huge dramatic action. Like he'll buy his daughter a bunch of new clothes, or he'll slap his ex-wife's new boyfriend with a glove. He'll take his kids to the company party, which obviously he's never done that before, right? I love how the movie does that he takes his daughter to the skating ring for like the company meetup, and he sees someone he knows, and they're like, hey, I didn't think you go to these. Right. And he's like, no, I'm always here, which is obviously a lie. He's never done it. He's all about doing that thing. And I think as the movie kind of slowly reveals, it's all about impressing his dad, or making his dad think he's a good person, or like building this image of himself that his dad can be proud of. And I think that is just another reflection of that. Like, I think it's fitting that like one of the first things he does is after he punches the guy, he meets up with his dad, and his dad notices his bloody knuckles. So I think that's more of the same. I mean, on the one hand, it's good because this guy was a total creep. On the other hand, I think the fascinating thing about that whole exchange between Nicholas Hoult and the creepy man that's trying to sexually assault him is Nick Cage's complete absence from it, right? Like, until he figures out what happens later, like it's this weird thing where Verbinski structures it so that's just occurring throughout the movie. Like, we'll cut away from Nick Cage's story to see this stuff happening. And I think the first time I saw it, I didn't know what to do with that, because it just feels like this is a very insular character study where we're only focusing on Nick Cage, and then randomly we cut to these other scenes. And I think that's to show, like, to be a dad, you don't need to do the big things. You just need to be there, and he's just not there.
Yeah, right. I think that's exactly it. I mean, I think that the overall statement of his character is something like he's so obsessed with the idea of being perceived well that he's actually not present in the moment.
Yeah,
and thus he's not paying attention, and he's missing the things that are happening around him.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he is not just like the caricature of a screw up dad, because it's like, I think it's nice that the movie lets him, like, for example, when he when he hears that his son said, the reason why I broke the guy's window is that he was sexually harassing me. Nick Cage character is immediately like, well, I believe that that's what happened. Like he doesn't doubt his son at all. It's just like he missed. It's like he has an idea of the way things are and the way he thinks things should be, and reality always just like slaps him in the face in this extremely jarring and borderline traumatic way, and he's always like recovering from the last thing, and he can't just be present. That's basically it.
He's so insecure about himself. He's so like, it's so fast. The way Verbinski uses the voiceover here to really reveal the character's insecurities, it comes off as a joke, but like, I mean, he introduces himself as a weatherman and then immediately is like, but I don't really do anything. I get paid $250,000 a year for 2 hours of work. And it's not really anything. And he has no pride in it. And like, the assumption that the people are hitting him with fast food because they know it's an easy job, which I don't think that's it, buddy. I mean, that's the funny part about the movie is like he at the end he moves to New York and becomes the national weatherman. He said, people don't hit me with Frosties anymore. Maybe it's because I walk around with a bow and arrow.
Right.
I think it's just because he's nicer to people, because he's happy and confident in himself. Like, one of the things we see is every time someone comes up to him in Chicago, he's just an asshole to them. And like, I totally get it. Like, you're out trying to live your life and people continually bother you, but they're just like, what's the temperature going to be? That's all they're asking. And he's just completely rude to every single one of them.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's actually another manifestation of him not really being able to be in the moment, because he's just like in his head about the whole thing, and obsessed with like the image, and obsessed with like feeling like he doesn't deserve their attention and all of these things, when in reality he could just be like, hey man, oh yeah, the Nippers Tuesday. Yeah. All right. See you around, like that. Yeah. That's all that was called for. It wouldn't have even been weird, but like he's so, I do think that, like you said there, I think an important part of it is that he's insecure and feels that he doesn't deserve any of this. And so, he like reads a kind of cynicism into everything that is really just him projecting. Yeah.
I mean, I think the line about the wind, right? It's wind, man. It just blows everywhere. I mean, that's like a view. Like, I think that is an important realization, because I think he wants it to be a job in which he could actually, like, he wants his life to be weather prediction, right? Like, he wants to be able to predict the weather in his life. He wants to be able to know what's going to happen and when and how to plan for it. And he wants to structure his life, and he wants everything to match up to his expectation of what it's going to be. He wants all that stuff, but his life is like the weather. You don't have control over this stuff, and you need to recognize that. You need to recognize that sometimes your life has a 19-degree variance. It's just going to fucking happen. Like, yeah. And I think part of his realization in the movie is getting to where he's okay with that, or understanding that.
I think that's my favorite thing about the structure, the story, the concept is that his professional life, which he doesn't care about, is ridiculously good. At the end of the movie, he's going to be making over $1 million a year. Yeah. And his personal life and family and relationship with his kids is always in shambles, and like he never feels like he's handling it correctly. Although, interestingly, you could make a case that he's probably being too hard on himself in some ways. I mean, in some ways, he's like, when it comes to anything related to his ex-wife, he's a disaster. Like it's all obviously his fault. Yeah. But when it comes to his kids, like, I think that's also interesting, is like, he's not aware that it's all obviously his fault when it comes to his ex-wife. When it comes to his kids, he thinks it's all his fault, but it's actually just a bunch of shit that's happening in life, and you just it comes up, and you do your best. But like, he takes it personally, and I think that's also a really interesting contrast there.
You're right. I mean, I think it is he is, like, I don't want to call this character an asshole, but certainly when it comes to his wife, he is. I think the scene where they go to therapy is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, because he just fucking immediately opens that paper. Just like immediately opens the paper and reads it, and then can't help himself but say something about it. And then his BJ's lacked enthusiasm is the most hilarious quote in the world. Oh my God. It's so, I mean, he's just awful, like, to her. And I mean, like, the tartar sauce is another great example where, like, obviously it's not about the tartar sauce. Obviously it's your wife asked you to get something and you couldn't remember that simple thing. And instead of just admitting that you fucked up, you lie. Like, they're out. They were out. They're really nice about it. I'm going to call him. And he's like, oh, fuck. Like, you're right. It is interesting. Those are two completely different things, because everything he deals with his kids, his stuff his son is going through, his stuff his daughter is going through, are things that really are not his fault. And I think he actually is very good with his daughter. Like, as much as I think a lot of the things he does, he's doing them from the wrong reason. Like, I think he's buying his daughter clothes specifically to impress his dad, right? Like, the first thing he says after she gets the clothes is, let's go show Pop, because he wants his dad to see this. Look, I did this thing, Dad. I did this thing. I helped out my daughter. They were calling her Camel Toe, which is just the worst. I feel so bad for this girl. Yeah. But it's more I wanted to show my dad that I can be a good dad. And so much of his choices are wrapped up in that whole thing. I mean, the reason he's excited about the Good Morning America job or whatever it's called, the reason he's excited about $1,000,001 All In is not because he wants the money, or it's he wants to show his dad. Like,
yeah, right. Which, so I mean, just there's so many examples of this, so I don't want to just go on and on about it, but like him putting the test on his dad's chair,
that's perfect,
and then the dad sitting on it, like at that, like you can sort of just read that as like, oh, his dad just doesn't like him, doesn't care about him. Then you realize his dad is obviously completely preoccupied because he's going to get cancer tests.
Yeah, he's dying.
He's dying. He doesn't. He's. It's not even that he doesn't care. It's that he's having a crisis. And if Nick Cage's character were like present and paying attention and like thinking about other people, then he might have been like, no, that was uncharacteristic. Dad, are you all right? You know, he doesn't ask. He doesn't say, you know, Dad, what's wrong? Mm-hmm. He's just hurt by it, right?
Yeah,
because he's yet again not paying attention.
Every assumption he has about his father is whenever his father is making these comments and questions and asking what's going on, and he's worried. Mm-hmm. He's a man that knows he's dying and is worried about his son and worried about his grandchildren. That's kind of that's what he says at the end, is like, you always worry about your kids.
Right.
And so he's not doing these things to chide his son. He's not doing these things to show his son that he thinks he's a failure, or that he's disappointed in him, or that he hasn't lived up to his Pulitzer Prize potential. He's just worried about him. He's just like, and that's all it is. And yeah, I mean, it's so wonderful because you have this part of his opening monologue, I think, when he's talking about his dad, is like, he won the Pulitzer, he won the book award, but what was the cost? Did he neglect his family? No, he didn't. He was a fine father. And so it's like, I think a different version of this script has a man who is obsessed by his father's approval, and his father is just a shitty person. But that's not who Michael Caine is playing in this movie. He's playing a fine person. He's playing a caring father and grandfather. It's just Nick Cage is so insecure and he feels like he's not living up to anything that he should, that he's turning his father's concern into disapproval.
Right. Yeah. He thinks like, you know, my dad thinks I'm a goofy fuck. And like in actuality, your dad is just probably like very sad that you're experiencing so much pain that you would slap a man with a glove.
Yeah.
which would be, I mean, like that's, I think that's actually a fairly like incisive observation into the father-son relationship is that sons will read disapproval when actually the father is usually just like, I want to help you and I don't know how, and it's and like if anything, the father is experiencing this as his own failure to have like helped you in life better or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I mean, if you want to get on Michael Caine, you could argue that he doesn't do a very good job communicating that to his son, but that's part of the process that he's going through. I think you could write a whole movie from his perspective and the process that he's going through. And the last conversation we see with him is when he gets to a point where he can say these things to his son. And I love, God, when Nick Cage throws away his terrible book because it's a terrible book, and he didn't even want to write a book. He wrote a book because his dad wrote books. Mm-hmm. And I just love it's a skill, son. I practiced it and I got good at it, just like you with your weather stuff.
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't even predict it. It's just a wind. Fuck. But like, I mean, that's the thing, is that he's actually quite good at being a weatherman, right? Like, he even says it himself. He lets his confidence in one area of the job come out, which is that he's very good at the green screen stuff, which is the whole job. Like, and it is not easy to be good at that. And obviously he's quite good at it because out of hundreds of candidates, he gets selected for Hello America. He's quite good at this thing. And yet he sees it as a silly, unimportant thing. And therefore he sees everyone else. He assumes everyone else thinks that too. This assumption is that everyone around him thinks he's a joke, and no one actually ever says that to him. No one ever dismisses his job, dismisses the work that he's doing. No one ever says it. Not even the meteorologists he works with is like we don't see any scene of him being jealous or dismissive of his accomplishments or anything. No one does. It's just him. It's all internal.
Yeah, I mean, and I think even his ex-wife, who is the most explicit, person who thinks he's a piece of shit, she just, if anything, she's reacting to what a self-hating asshole he is.
Yeah.
Which turns into being an abusive asshole. Like I think one of the more clever shots is the moment when I forget the exact sort of build up toward it, but he's like, it's segueing into the flashback where we see that he failed to get the tartar sauce, and you feel based on his voiceover like it's going to prove his point that nothing is his fault, and then in the flashback he's just a complete asshole, just a raging asshole, and you're like, oh, like, okay, so it was a terrible marriage and you were awful actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was but that's the thing, is like the reason why he behaves that way is because he expects kind of to be treated poorly. Another thing that I keep thinking of is when he, he's thinking about the voiceover thing, and he's thinking about the fact that everybody throws food at him, and then he thinks people throw food at clowns, and then it's great because it like the voiceover pauses after that, and then also the Nick Cage in the scene, like an expression of like shock hits his face at that exact moment.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a great moment.
Yeah, I actually read that Cage recorded all that voiceover before they started filming, and they actually piped the voiceover into his ear while he was filming the scenes that the voiceover would have been playing over, which is not a usual thing. They don't normally do it that way, but I think that's why like the timing and that whole part was just so like well done, right?
Yeah,
because it's perfectly timed, it's perfectly believable. It's because he actually just heard the line. Yeah.
Right, and he's having the realization, right? And I thought that worked really well, because otherwise there can be a feeling of disconnection with voiceovers, and you're like, okay, am I supposed to be paying attention to the scene, or am I supposed to be paying attention to the voiceover? And this made it feel like, no, we're watching this man have these thoughts at this moment.
Yeah,
like it always felt like that.
Yeah, another example of his self-absorbedness is, I bet no one ever threw a pie at like Harriet Tubman, the founder of the Underground Railroad. Yeah. You're right, Dave. No one threw a pie at Harriet Tubman. They just, enslaved her and tried to murder her. It's like, I think it's so fascinating because he's so self-absorbed. He's so egotistical and also self-deprecating at the same time. It's a really fascinating character because like he both thinks he doesn't deserve this kind of treatment while also secretly thinking he absolutely deserves this kind of treatment.
Yeah, it is interesting because like there are certain things that make you feel like you should hate him, and like because he is just such a selfish, childish prick at times. But I think it's just the fact that like you see him genuinely trying sometimes, and even when he's trying, he might not be doing a very good job actually. But you just get this sense of like he's just an idiot. He's just an idiot. He doesn't know what to do, and it's like everything he tries to do backfires, and so you almost can't blame him for kind of giving up.
I it's so good, and I think Verbinski's directing here really helps out. Like, of course, Nick Cage's performance here is great because he manages to skirt this line. I think you're absolutely right that he's such an asshole, and in someone else's hands you would just hate this guy, and I think you can't hate him. Like, you need to hate him a little bit, but you also need to like him a little bit, and if you don't, the movie doesn't work. And I think Nick Cage is just this exact middle ground between a fucking asshole and also a kind of charming guy and also a very pitiable person. Like, he just hits the middle of all three of these things to the point where you never actually hate him.
It's like when the Hello America people are watching his audition tape, and the woman is like, he's handsome, he's charming, and the man is like, he's an asshole. Like, you're just right, because you're also torn between these two poles.
And I think Verbinski really helps sell that, especially the kind of goofiness, like the way this is a movie in which people don't talk quite normally. There's a stiltedness of the dialogue. There's a very deliberate pace of the dialogue where people like pause more than people pause in real life, where it's kind of slow and clunky and everyone talks like they're uncomfortable all the time. And I think it really helps sell it. Like I love the first scene where we see Nick Cage and his ex-wife, where like he drops off his daughter and then is like so desperate to start up a conversation with her. He's so desperate to like think of anything to start up a conversation with her. And so he first says, I had to take my dad to Northwestern for a test. And that doesn't work because she's just like, oh, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. And then the conversation ends. So he picks up a snowball and tries to playfully, lovingly peg her with a snowball and nails her in the face. And everything about this works so well because like you can see his excitement and like you can see on his face why he thinks this is a good idea. And of course it's not. It's a terrible idea. And I just love everything about that.
It's so funny. I mean, it's so funny. But it's like the worst cringe humor, which which I think is one of the things that keeps me from loving this movie as much as I could. Is that like cringe humor with me is just like physically painful. And that's,
I love it.
that's kind of the whole basis of this movie. I mean, I mean, it's great. Like it's super well done. It's just like it's just like it's too well done. It's too real. You're just like, oh god, oh this hurts my chest to watch this guy and you know and the way he, you know, you can see on his face like when he hits her with the snowball, his immediate expression of like horror and like, oh no, god, what have I done? I made this so much worse. And just like like that's, and I think it's worth it to talk about Nick Cage specifically because I think that does really like Verbinski knows exactly what he has in Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
He knows to leave the camera on this guy and let the whole, you know, just like that snowball scene, let the whole moment of him throwing it and then realizing with horror what's going to happen and then reacting after it does happen. And you soak in every molecule of that actor's performance. Because he's so great. I really don't understand people who don't like Nicolas Cage.
I don't either. I mean, like, it's not to say he's good in every single movie he's in, right? But he, like, between this and Adaptation, which I think is a movie remarkably similar to this in a lot of ways, he's just showing the depth and the range he has to his performance. Like, he can go to 11, but he can also play a 1. And he's playing a 1 in this movie a lot, right? It's a very, in a lot of ways, it's a very laid back, you know, slow performance in which a lot of his emotion and a lot of the subtext of the movie have to be revealed through, you know, subtle facial movements, like the way he holds himself, the way he moves, the way he occupies the space when he's with other people, the way Nick Cage holds himself when he's next to Michael Caine, when he's next to his ex-wife, when he's, you know, not the, like when he walks around set, like at the weatherman thing, like when he gets in front of the green screen, he turns it on and in his charming self. But every other time we see him in that studio, he's like hanging out by the water cooler, like slumped over and like embarrassed. Like he's embarrassed to be there because he's embarrassed by himself. And Nick Cage has to express all this stuff without dialogue because it's all subtext. Like the movie doesn't say any of these things, but it's there.
Yeah, right. There's a critic who described Nick Cage as having the presence of a leading man and the eccentricities of a character actor.
That's perfect. Yeah.
I think that is perfect because when you think about him, you think about all of the major roles that he's done. You can just, I mean, he's done a bunch of movies, so you can kind of flip through, you know, Saving Arizona or Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Con Air and, you know, and this movie. And it's like, okay, like he's more of a character actor than he is a leading man in the sense that he's 3 different human beings in those 3 movies, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and The Rock, like,
of course.
Like
yeah.
it's like he's just doing wildly different things all over the place, and yet he's bringing that sort of like charisma and energy and just like the magnetism of you know, having your eyes are on him, right? That's leading man energy. But yeah, I don't know. It's something extremely special and unique.
Yeah.
And like if it's over the top at times, I feel like it's always done in a way that's calculated for a specific effect of being captivating.
Yeah, I mean, and there are leading men that cannot turn that leading man energy off.
Mm-hmm.
I think George Clooney's a good example of that. Like he can't turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
He's devilishly charming no matter what type of character he's playing. And he's a good actor. I'm not saying he's not a good actor, but like Nick Cage can turn the leading man energy on when he needs to, and also recognize when the scene needs him to be his quirky character actor self.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a movie where he gets to kind of do both, like in different scenes. I think there are moments when he asserts his confidence as that charming lead, and there are moments when he has to slink and be awkward and be, you know, the Nick Cage that everyone thinks of when they think of Nick Cage.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like there's something just innately watchable about it. Like even the scene where he's just sitting there shooting arrows at a bullseye, like
right.
He has so much presence in that scene, and also you feel so bad for him. Like I think the archery stuff is so good because, like, I mean, it's just a perfect way for Verbinski to like track his growth through the movie, because you just show him getting closer to the bullseye.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wait, this is just his life and how he is handling his life. And you finally got it, Nick.
Right.
You're finally hitting the shots.
And the fact that he finds something where he can have some measure of control and a sense of accomplishment and a sense of improvement.
And he's willing to put in the work for it.
Yeah.
Like he's putting in the work, he's practicing, and he's doing the thing. And he recognizing that it's not the big, large gestures. It's just going and shooting a lot and practicing. Like that's one thing that he doesn't quite get with, you know, being a father, with being a husband, with all these relationships. He doesn't quite get that it's not the big, broad moments. It's the little tiny things.
Yeah. And
he just doesn't get it.
consistency. And
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah. I don't know if I don't know if I'm like projecting this onto things, but it speaking of the ability to kind of turn off the energy, it feels like there's moments where, you know, he's sort of retreating and letting, you know, for example, letting Michael Caine have a scene. And it's like, well, Michael Caine is somebody who I think can also have leading man energy if he wants to, but also absolutely knows how to have supporting role energy. And I mean, that's sort of what he has come into in you know the later part of his career is you know a lot of father and mentor roles, right? But it's like I think that you know, like you said, Nick Cage can attenuate that mania. So it's not like, you know, I mean, I think Jim Carrey is a really good actor too, but I was going to say, like, it's not like it's like Jim Carrey like crazy wild energy all over the place. It's like no, he knows exactly what he's doing at every moment. So when he's being over the top, it's intentional. And this is one movie where he's rarely over the top. I think one of my favorite over the top moments, if anything, it's not even that over the top, but it's when it's after he's beat up the counselor guy and he's sitting with his son and he does this hilariously awkward puts his arm around his son and then like jerkily scoots his chair across the floor, and his son is just giving him this look like, my God, what the hell are you doing, Dad? And it's great. It's so incredibly awkward that it becomes like physical comedy, but it's somehow also like realistic, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's endearing, but I do think it's like, once again, it's one of those moments where I think he's doing what he imagines the good dad would do in that situation. Like he imagines a situation, and when I've rescued my son, I've done the right thing, and now I will have this bonding moment with him where I put my arm around him and everything will be okay. And it's like, that's not how this stuff works, buddy. Like it's like you can't. I feel like he wants every moment to be a picture and every moment to be a home movie where he can look back and say, yes, this is when I did the good thing.
Right.
Here it is. Like you can see clearly because my arm is around my son, and that means he loves me and I love him, and we've got it all together and everyone's happy and good. His son is a far way away from being happy. Like he beat up the guy that tried to abuse him, but he went through that, right? Like he went through that and it's serious, and he already had problems before that. His daughter is also very unhappy and she's getting there. She's getting better, but these are people with serious problems, and he thinks because their problems don't align with his vision of what he wants things to be, he wants to do one gesture to fix it, and then everything's fine.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how we see the one scene with the son and the counselor, but then we don't see the scene, in the car where he makes a pass at him and breaks the window?
Yeah, I'm kind of very glad that we didn't see that.
Yeah,
I don't want to see it.
I don't want to see it, but it's also like I feel like it's just an interesting choice that we did get the first scene and not the second one. Like maybe I would have expected to not have either of those scenes.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. The scene where he asks him to take off his shirt is incredibly disturbing as well. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if anything, that almost gives you an incorrect sense of what the movie is going to be.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not that goes nowhere. It certainly becomes plot relevant, but you're just like, holy shit, I'm not here for this at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's the I guess I was just kind of noticing that like the movie is really fairly tight in on him, and then it makes a few swerves where you see what the kids are doing. I guess it's important. Yeah, I guess it's important to see like the kids are dealing with their own problems in their own ways, and he's just kind of not part of that at all. Like they have their own lives. They have their own lives. They're dealing with their own problems. And he internalizes all of that when he finds out about it. And yeah.
It reflects on him, like that his daughter is unhappy and
smoking.
I mean, and smoking. Yeah. And isn't it interesting he never has a conversation with her about the smoking?
Yeah.
He sees the cigarettes in her purse and he never actually talks with her about that.
It is interesting, right? And that's one of the things with the film where I'm like, is that supposed to be showing him failing to have a hard conversation that he should have, or is that supposed to be just a little note of like, good for you staying out of your daughter's business?
No, I don't think so. I don't
like, but it's hard for me to tell sometimes, I guess, because he does a lot of things that are obviously stupid, and then he does some things where you're like, okay, is that supposed to be another stupid thing, or is this supposed to be him learning? And I was never quite sure.
Yeah, I think this is an example of him not being willing or present enough to actually address and solve the problems at hand.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like all the problems that he does solve are external, right? This man tries to do something terrible to his son. He beats the shit out of the man. People are calling his daughter names. He buys his daughter new clothes. He never actually addresses the internal shit that's going on with them, the difficult shit, the hard shit to that you're going to have to sit down and have a conversation that's not going to be solved in one afternoon at the store or one punch to the face of a bad guy. Like he did none. That's never anywhere in the movie at all. So, I mean, I think the movie ends with him moving to New York and his family seems happier without him. And I think that's part of what he needs to realize. Right. I mean, I love the Michael Caine stuff at the end is sometimes you just have to chuck stuff in this shit life, right? I think it's beautiful. I mean, it's depressing, but it's beautiful that like sometimes you just gotta, cut and run. You gotta recognize that this isn't good or healthy. Like your book's bad. You have to recognize your book's bad. You have to recognize your marriage was bad. You have to recognize you're not doing a good job being a father right now. And the best thing you can do is kind of step back and figure your shit out first.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's interesting because the movie ends with a tone that could have spun in a horribly nihilistic direction, right? But it didn't feel like it was trying to play that way.
No, I found it very hopeful.
Yeah, right. Because it's not like he's totally out of his kids' lives at all. Like he says, didn't he say he flies back on the weekends?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
So it's like it's more like he's just kind of stopped being so kind of suffocating about it. He's like, okay, I'm gonna be there in the ways that I can, and then I'm gonna do my own thing and be my own person.
And let this Russ guy help take care of your kids.
Yeah.
Like when he slaps him with the glove, like the thing he keeps repeating over again is, "Why are you here? Why are you here?"
Yeah.
Which side note, but Cage's delivery of that line is perfect because it's like, why are you helping? Why are you here? Like it's not the way I would ever think to deliver that line. There's the emphasis is on the wrong part. It's like said quickly. It's like said he knows what he's saying is embarrassing and the bad thing to say, but he just can't help himself.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Because the reason he's frustrated is like I should be the one central to this drama because I'm the dad, and I should be the one helping and fixing it, and then getting the credit for fixing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you being here, especially in front of my dad, is fucking up the whole drama.
Yeah.
The whole dynamic of the way I envision this is supposed to work, which really just kind of yet again and reveals that he's not really prioritizing like helping his son. He's prioritizing how do I look coming out of this.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that makes you dislike him.
Certainly, yeah.
But
he wants that image of him on the float in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with his family around him, his loving, supporting family. He wants that image, and sorry, guy, you don't get that. Like that's the way it works. Sometimes you got to chuck that image out of your head.
Yeah,
just like you deleted your terrible book. Did you see? I don't remember what it said, but the little sentences of the book we got, it just looked horrible.
I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, it's great. It's like the best kind of hackneyed trash.
Well, because it's very clear that he's like never practiced writing in his life,
right.
And he just said, "I'm going to write a book because my dad is a novelist,
right.
So I'm going to do this."
Yeah, I mean, plus it seemed like he was trying to write like an airport thriller type of thing, and nothing with any kind of depth or feeling to it at all.
Yep. Oh my gosh, it's so good. I see. This is why I love this movie. I think it's very funny, and it's very touching to me. I love that we haven't talked about his father's living funeral and his like a rock speech, which is, I mean, again, and that's like the thing. He doesn't start speaking from the heart. He starts with like, when I think of my father, I think of this song that is he doesn't even understand. Like it's all about appearance. He's like not giving the speech to mean something to his father. He's giving the speech because he wants to be the guy that gives the best speech at the living funeral, the one that everyone remembers.
Yeah. Right. And then, but then I think his father then once again shows like how to just be present and pay attention, because when he shows up in the car, he's like playing the song, and it's like, I was paying attention.
Yeah. To the point where like you can tell his dad has probably listened to the song a couple times and been like, okay, so which part?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's really wonderful.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
We haven't talked about Verbinski too much this episode, but I think just it's good to say that this movie lives or dies by the tone and the rhythm and the pacing of this movie, and he directs this all with aplomb, right? I mean, like there's such a confidence to this movie, and it's telling a small story. It's telling a deeply personal story, and it requires these very deliberate cuts that really help drive the energy of the scene, like to land the comedic beats, but also to land the dramatic beats. Like you said, he knows when to hold on Cage's face. He knows when to cut. He knows when to move the camera and when to keep the camera still. Like it feels like another director to me.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
I mean, I feel like the last 3 movies of his that we've covered were all movies where they could have been absolute bomb disaster farces in the wrong hands. And it's the fact that he understands what he understands what he's supposed to be pulling out of it. He understands what the story is. He understands what the dramatic stakes are and where the heart is supposed to be, and the moment to moment cohesion of literal shot to shot cohesion of what your attention is, where your attention is supposed to be, and where your sense of the momentum of the story is supposed to be. And he just handles that. And I mean, I never know, I guess, directors do a lot of specifically, telling the actors how to deal with certain scenes. Like it's sort of their job to put everything together. And so the actor obviously has a lot of freedom in terms of how they do things, but also there's a lot of, the director being like, all right, so like, this is the context of this scene. And so this is how I need you to play this. And so like, I guess the reason I bring that up is in a movie like this, and I'll focus on Michael Caine's character, because I think he's very central to like the emotional ebb and flow of the movie. Is in various scenes, like you think maybe there's an edge of anger despair or sorrow to what's happening with his character, but it's all very subtle, and very rarely is it actually center stage because Nick Cage is oblivious mainly.
Yeah.
But it's there for you to notice, right? And that's the kind of thing where I think like that's totally crucial to the movie working. Actually, it's totally crucial that you understand that Michael Caine is also going through, basically the struggle of his life in the background and not really being paid attention to. And that only happens if you have a director who's there saying like, oh, okay, Michael, like, you understand in this scene, like this is what's just happened and this is what you found out. And so you're going to feel this way about it. And maybe they have a back and forth. Michael Caine is great. I'm sure he has his own feelings about things, but like the director has to be the one making sure that's all there.
Yeah.
And that's what he consistently does in all of his movies. Like all of the stuff with like what he does with the camera and how he designs shots, all of that aside, I think the thing that I noticed the most with him is like every character and every shot knows why they're there.
Yeah. I think he's an actor's director for sure. I think you're absolutely right. That is, as different as this movie is from all the other ones, that is one consistent thing is the actors. I have not seen a bad performance in a Gore Verbinski movie yet. None of them have been bad. And a lot of these are actors that aren't great. Like we're talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, like Orlando Bloom, not the best actor, right? Not the best actor. But I think Verbinski understands his strengths and allows the movie to play to his strengths in a way that makes him work as a character. And I think you're absolutely right. Michael Caine is such a great example because Michael Caine can be this powerfully emotional actor, but he has to play a character in this movie that for 9/10 of it is completely reserved, completely almost stoic. Like the movie wants you to look at Michael Caine through Nick Cage's eyes and question if he's being judgmental, if he's being dismissive,
right,
if he's being an asshole. And he's not. But and the movie refuses to reveal that until the very end, until Michael Caine gives his beautiful speech to Nick Cage at the end of the movie. And that's the first time that Verbinski allows him to look emotional, allows him to look vulnerable, allows him to everything that's been going on in him through the entire movie comes out in that moment. And he's days away, maybe weeks away from dying. Like this is him at the end, literally the end of his life. And he's finally expressing himself in a way that he hasn't throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
And you need a director that understands that important thing, that can read the script and know that and get that and tell Michael Caine, you got to pull back. I need less emotion from you. I need you to be more wooden. I need you to be more stilted, but I need you to leave just a soupçon of what's underneath in there.
Yeah. Right. Yes, exactly. It's an almost impossible target to hit, and it's just like he does it constantly. It's funny because when you mentioned Orlando Bloom, I was thinking about all the moments where there's just a shot of him having some kind of like reaction expression, and it's like that's so Verbinski actually.
Yeah.
To have the shot where like the whole purpose of the shot is just to establish this character saw that, because that's what you're tracking in your mind is like where is everyone mentally, and Verbinski knows that. Like there's a man, he's operating on such a level that you rarely see that. When you see what he's doing, it's like obviously that's how you should do that. Obviously that's how you should make a movie. Obviously that's how you should shoot a scene, but it's not actually that common.
Yeah.
Like it's really only the people at the very top of their game who are doing this sort of thing. And very often I feel like there's a lot of just like, okay, well, we have the greatest actors in the world here, so just put the camera on them and they'll do fine.
Yeah.
And I think Verbinski is never leaving anything to chance.
It's hard to do, man. I mean, it's hard to make good movies, and it's hard. Like there's so many pushes and pulls and compromises and different visions at play at the same time that you need a director who can steer the ship and bring out the best in everyone. And yeah, that's really difficult to do a lot of the times. And a lot of movies fail because they're not able to do that. I think even in Verbinski's weakest films, he is able to do at least some of that. And this is, I think, one of his strongest ones. I adored this movie. And I guess like as we round the end of the conversation here, you kind of prefaced the talk at the beginning with why do we think he did this movie?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think part of it is just you make a movie like Pirates of the Caribbean, which is just an exhausting movie. And you want a little break. Your next project, you want to be smaller and less actors, less special effects, less complicated movie making.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely part of it. I think the irony of that, of course, is that like both Verbinski and Nick Cage were insistent that they shoot this movie in Chicago itself. They like the studio wanted them to shoot it in Vancouver. They were like, no, you can shoot it there and we'll make it look like Chicago. And they're like, no, for authenticity's sake, we need to shoot it in Chicago. And so they went to Chicago in February, and Chicago was having like record warm spell. And so there was no snow on the ground. And so they had to make a bunch of fake snow. So he wanted to do this simple movie with not very many special effects. And in basically every scene in this movie, they needed to just come in and make it look wintry because there was no snow. And I don't know. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I have anything super incisive to say other than there's something ineffably similar between Nicolas Cage and Gore Verbinski as artists. Just their approach to it. I don't know. I don't really know if I could nail it down precisely, but it feels like they're both operating at a level where they're just using all of the tools and they're approaching it in sort of what you could call a first principles sort of way, where it's almost like they're both artists who have rethought everything about their craft from the ground up. And I think I read something like Ethan Hawke said the only actor who's done anything new with the craft since like I don't know, some classic golden age actor is Nicolas Cage. And it's like yeah, like that he gives you this impression of just being like a kind of innovator. And I think of Verbinski the same way. So I sort of see them as like okay, well, why did he want to do The Weatherman? Well, maybe it was just like, this is a complete guess, but maybe it's just like, well, Nick Cage maybe was like interested in the script, and then Verbinski was like, oh, if Nick Cage wants to do it, well, I want to work with him. I'm making this up. Yeah. I don't know if that happened at all, but I do wonder if they didn't have some kind of like magnetic attraction to each other in that way.
I wonder if there's a world in which both Cage and Verbinski see themselves as kind of weathermen of the film industry. This thing where they have a certain amount of self-confidence issues related to the career that they're having and the choices they've made within this career, that they worry that people see them like jokes, that people throw fast food at them, because I mean, Nick Cage has had this really fascinating career that a lot of people make fun of. A lot of people make fun of Nick Cage's choices and how broad he goes sometimes and how wild he goes, especially in the 2000s. And I wonder if Verbinski is the same way. Like, he's had a really interesting kind of not typical career. Like, we've talked about a lot of auteurs on this show, and he's not your typical one. He's doing a different kind of movie, and he's not afraid to do the big popcorn film. He's not afraid to do the big broad horror film. He's not afraid to do the family comedy. And I wonder if that's what kind of attracted them to this script, to this feeling of insecurity, and how making the movie maybe allowed them to work through that.
Mm-hmm. And the feeling of getting like undeserved success, maybe, which
maybe,
which is sort of absurd from my perspective. But I guess this is one of those things about artists where it's like many artists feel like imposters, even if they're like the best, right?
Yeah.
So
I wonder how meteorologists feel about this movie, because like there's actually a lot of science that goes into weather prediction. I mean, yes, it is the wind, and yes, it just blows everywhere, but they like do a lot of work.
I mean, it's gotten a lot better over time, too.
Yes, it has.
So I don't know. I have no idea.
It's got a lot better over the time, but still 10-day forecasts are bullshit. Like, can we all just 10 days in the future, you don't actually know what the weather is. You're just running a probability model.
I mean, it's, I think what's funny is I think their probability estimates are probably pretty accurate in the sense that you only have a 10% chance of being right about your prediction. And so they do their best. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all I had. Anything else from you?
No, I thought this was a really good movie. There may be a couple of a couple of places where I struggle with it that keep me from absolutely adoring it. And I mean, if people haven't seen it, it's a Verbinski movie, man. Like, it's a solid movie. And if you like cringe humor, go for it.
Yeah, that's going to scare away a lot of people.
Yeah,
which I totally understand. But
that's it.
All right, that is Gore Verbinski's The Weatherman. Our next Verbinski film will see us returning to Pirates of the Caribbean with movie number 2, Dead Man's Chest, where things start to get a little crazy.
All right.
All right, Matt, before we go, we got to talk about the movie theater situation because they're back. They're back, baby. Movies are back.
Yeah. They you can go to them now, I heard.
Yeah, they're in the theaters and you can go to them. Actually, as of the time of recording this, I have not gone yet, but my wife and I tomorrow, Thursday night, are going to see A Quiet Place Part 2 in a movie theater. We've got a babysitter lined up for the kiddo, and we're going to go to the movies, and we're going to see a movie, and it's going to be wild. I'm so looking forward to it.
That sounds very weird. Honestly, this has been a very weird week because I went back to work for the first time in over a year. I met with friends without a mask on for one of the first times in over a year. It was it's been a very surreal week, actually, like genuinely eerie at times.
Yeah. And look, I want to say, like, not all of the world has progressed to the point that we have. Like, there's still some very bad places out there with this virus. There's still some bad places in our country with this virus as well, but we're both vaccinated. My whole family's vaccinated. And so I'm feeling comfortable to start doing these things again.
Right.
And it's just very exciting. And the rest of the country is feeling that way as well. I mean, we kind of talked about what was going to happen with movie theaters when they came back. A Quiet Place Part 2 was a #1 movie last weekend. Its opening weekend was $47 million. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
For reference, the first movie opened to 50 million, and was not coming off the tail end of a giant pandemic in which nobody left their house for an entire year. So, like, I think they're people are very hopeful.
Yeah.
And people are very hopeful about the theater industry. We kind of talked about this throughout last year. Like, what is this going to be like when people start going back? Like, now that streaming platforms have really stepped up and taken a lot of the stuff away from the theaters, are people going to want to go back? We've postulated at different times, no, they wouldn't. And yes, they would. And it seems like people want to go to movie theaters. And I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about here is, like, what do we think the summer movie season is going to look like? I mean, I guess my question for you is, what is the movie that's going to make you go back to the movie theaters?
Yeah. So personally, I've been wanting to take my kids to see Black Widow.
Okay.
Because we love to see Marvel movies together. We've watched all of them together at home. I think we went to see Spider-Man Far From Home together because that was probably the only one that came out when they were like old enough to take to the theater. And I really want to, I want to go with them. I mean, if anything, it's more because I want to go with my kids than because I have to see that movie in the theater. And then, of course, after that, I've been looking forward to Dune for like 2 years or maybe more. So, but that's later on. That's in October. But
yeah. And Dune will release same day HBO Max, but you think you're going to go to the theater?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, the only real question is, okay, so I'm definitely going to the theater. The only real question is, am I going to wait to watch it before I see it in the theater?
Touche.
Because I just want to give that movie money and make it seem like 100,000 billion people have need to see the second half. That just needs to happen, Scott.
I don't know.
Scott,
I don't know.
I don't like those sounds that you're making.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think the interesting thing here to me is, I think if you looked at Black Widow a year ago, you probably would have framed that as the likely candidate for the least successful and or least exciting MCU movie in a while.
Uh-huh.
I don't feel like there was a lot of energy and excitement around it. I mean, it's a prequel. It was coming right off the back of Avengers Endgame. So you have this big bombastic ending, and then you have this prequel story about one character who's a character. I mean, I like Black Widow. Don't get me wrong. But I think the thing that's happened now is this movie's going to come out, and I'm predicting it's going to be huge because people haven't seen an MCU movie in theaters in over a year. And I just think people are going to be really, really excited to go back and see the big showcase, 4-quadrant blockbuster movie. And I think this movie has slotted itself very, very nicely to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole demographic of people who go to see comic book movies haven't gotten to go see a comic book movie in the theater for a year. So, yeah. The
other movie that's going to do very, very well because of this is Fast and the Furious 9, which comes out this month as well. I think it's going to be a huge movie. That's another movie that people are going to be itching to go back and see. Very excited about that. I don't know if you remember this, but they were the first ones to move last year. They like in March, they were like, we're moving to 2021. And at this point, I was like, that's ridiculous. That's too far into the future. And they got it right. And I think they're going to reap the benefits of that. For sure.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's great. Good for them.
The other one is In the Heights, which is a musical by Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton fame. This is a movie that was supposed to come out last year, and I think it was already going to be very successful. I think this movie is going to be huge. It's like a feel-good movie musical. Like, it's the exact kind of thing that just would do really well in a crowded theater. And I think a lot of people are going to go see it. Like, I think these 3 movies are just going to be huge. And this is going to be a huge month for the movies. Like, if you're owning a theater company, you're very excited about June. And I don't know. I'm really excited too. Like, here's the thing about movie theaters. They're good. And you need to see movies in them because it's better that way.
Yeah, I think that you're right about all of that. I think that once... it's going to be interesting because I'm going to make a really kind of convoluted prediction, and those are always less likely by default because of the way math works. But my convoluted prediction is June's going to be a really good month. All those movies are going to do really well. And then a whole bunch more movies are going to come out. And then that's going to be too many movies. And then they're going to be competing with each other. And then they're all going to start doing really, really mediocre because there still aren't that many people who feel comfortable going to the theaters.
Yeah.
And then eventually everyone will become comfortable and it'll go back to normal, but it'll take like 6 months to 6 to 12 months for that to happen.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that. I do think there's so many movies coming out this year because you have all the 2021 movies that were coming out.
Right.
And then you have a bunch of 2020 movies that got pushed back. Like there's 4 Marvel movies coming out this year, and they haven't even started to come out yet, and the year's halfway over. So there's going to be so much stuff. Like every director that you love probably has a movie coming out this year. Like I think almost every director that we've done a Deconstructing series has a movie coming out this year. Like Matrix 4, Old from Shyamalan. Fincher had a movie last year. I don't think he has one this year, but God, there's so many fucking movies, man. Edgar Wright has a movie coming out this year.
It's so funny because I didn't even realize the Eternals is coming out in November. Yeah, I was like, wow, okay, yeah, wow. It's gonna be a headlong rush. This is fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm ready for this. Like I see people complaining about people in theaters again on Twitter, and I'm like, yes, the world is healing.
Yeah, right.
This is actually an interesting thing that's happening. I don't know if it's kind of a tangent, but people are behaving like animals in public lately. Have you been following any of this?
Not beyond what you've mentioned to me offhand.
So both Southwest Airlines and American Airlines have stopped serving alcohol on their planes because people keep getting drunk and fighting people. And then there's been this big problem at the playoff basketball is going on right now. And there's been a big problem with fans like throwing shit at players.
Wow.
And it's like, we all stayed inside for a year and everyone forgot how to behave like fucking like well-behaved human beings. And it's just wild. So I'm wondering as movie theaters start to fill up, if that problem is going to spill over into theaters as well.
Maybe so. I mean, I've kind of noticed in myself a kind of like carpe diem attitude that not that it wasn't there at all before, but it's like when you viscerally feel like at any moment your freedom could be taken away for a year, you tend to just be like, fuck it. I'm just gonna go. And like, I'm not like, I haven't like misbehaved as a result of that, but like I can kind of imagine the mentality that goes into that. I'm not defending this behavior. It's just like, I can kind of see it.
It's just wild. I am curious to see. I think there's going to be some fights in movie theaters. I'm just imagining someone talking and then someone just clocking someone. Like a woman on a Southwest airplane just punched a flight attendant in the face. What?
Yeah.
What?
That's like a federal crime, right?
Yeah.
So, don't do that, folks.
I don't know. It's wild.
Doof.
But that brings me to my final topic of the night, Matt, which is a little Disney film called Cruella. Now, you have not seen this movie.
I have not seen this movie. I don't know. You've confused me, Scott. You've confused me. I'm just gonna let you go. Just tell me about Cruella.
So, first of all, I think we all know the story of 101 Dalmatians, right? So all these dogs, there's an evil lady. She wants to kill the dogs, skin them, make a coat out of them. They're puppies. They're baby dogs.
Right. And she wants a Dalmatian coat because she's a fashionista.
Yeah. So this is her origin story, which is a thing no one thought we needed. But here's the thing about this movie. It's crazy. It's so insane. And I think everyone involved in this movie knew what they were doing. Like, everyone that reviews this movie is talking about how insane it is to make a movie about the villain who wanted to murder and skin puppies. Because why does that villain need an origin story? Why does that villain need a sympathetic origin story? Like, that's one of the Disney villains that was just objectively bad and we didn't have to worry about it, right?
Right.
And I think the movie knows that. Like, I'm imagining the writers that wrote the script being told by Disney, hey, here's a few $1 million. We need you to write a Cruella origin story. And they're just like, the fuck? How are we going to do this? And I think they do it by doing a lot of crazy shit that I think is actually really fun. Can I spoil some of this movie for you?
Yeah, as long as we warn people, sure.
Okay. Folks, we're going to spoil some of this movie. Cruella's mother dies in the opening minutes of this movie. From a Dalmatian charging her and knocking her off of a cliff, which is just the most wild thing in the world. Like, I refuse to believe the movie didn't know it was being hilarious with that. Because that's like, why does she hate Dalmatians so much? Oh, of course, because one knocked her mother off a cliff.
I mean, it's hilarious because obviously that's not why Cruella de Vil wants about Dalmatian coat. No, but I think it's kind of a piece with all of these like villain prequels that they've done where they are just contradicting what the original movie actually said about the villain, but like they have to.
Of course.
Like sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean they do have to, but I think the way this movie both contradicts but winks at the things that it's contradicting are just inherently fascinating to me, because there's also a moment where like, so the main villain of this piece is basically Cruella de Vil, but an earlier version of her, and she has 3 Dalmatians, and so Cruella at one point kidnaps the 3 Dalmatians for a complicated reason that I won't get into, but she's staring at them and then goes, "They would make lovely coats, though," and then everyone looks at her like she's crazy. And then she laughs and says, "I'm joking." And it's like, okay, but you're not though, because you did that later. But I mean, that's what I think the movie is having fun with all these things. And it's doing this. So the fashion in this movie is amazing. I think this movie is going to win the Oscar for costuming because the costumes in it are so incredible. But it's doing all these things that I have to assume it's just having a fun time with them. Like Anita and Roger from 101 Dalmatians are in this movie. Anita is a reporter and Roger is the lawyer that works for this movie's antagonist. And in the 101 Dalmatians, Cruella says the phrase, Anita, darling, right? And I assumed that was like Anita, comma, darling. Like she's using the word darling.
I'm sure it was, Scott, but go on.
In this movie, the character's name is Anita Darling.
Of course it is.
And like, I refuse to believe that they didn't know that they were having fun with that.
Do they reveal where the man got his pipe that he smokes? No. Well, that's disappointing.
No. But also, you know how Cruella had like black hair and also white hair?
Uh-huh.
And you kind of just assumed, oh, maybe she's like going gray and then she's a fashionista. So she like made a style out of it. No, Matt, she was just born with her hair split down the middle with half being gray and half being black.
Okay.
And that's hilarious. That's fucking hilarious. Like the movie makes these choices and the whole time I'm just like, what? I can't help but respect it. Like if you were frustrated by like the Aladdins and the Lion Kings, the movies that are just taking the cartoon and just remaking it, like this should be your bag. Because is it totally unnecessary? Yes, it's totally unnecessary. But is it kind of a good time? Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's a good point because I do dislike the movies where it's just like this is the same as the first version but worse. Except this sounds like it's just totally having fun with the whole concept of doing these villain prequels because it's an inherently ridiculous concept. So the only way to make it worthwhile is to make it ridiculous.
But it has to also be like this woman empowerment movie because that's what Disney's requiring to do. So it also has to do that, which leads me to the most hilarious part of this movie. Which I'm going to spoil everything here.
Okay.
So if anyone cares about Cruella, which you shouldn't care about spoilers because who cares? But if you do, so Emma Thompson is the antagonist, right? And it's revealed that she's actually Cruella's mother, and the woman that got knocked over by the Dalmatian was just like a servant at this Duchess's place that stole her away because her mother was going to murder her.
Okay.
Anyway, so at the end of the movie, she defeats Emma Thompson by having Emma Thompson push her off of the same cliff that she pushed her mother off of using her dogs. Of course, she has a parachute. And then she has that version of her character who is named Estella killed off. So she's dead. And then she comes back as Cruella. And Estella has willed all of her money that she would have gotten from the death of her mother or the arrest of her mother to Cruella. And thus she becomes Cruella de Vil, the rich baroness who, like, all that stuff, right? The crazy thing about this is throughout the movie, we're seen as Estella is this kind person who loves her friends and cares for them and is really just obsessed with fashion. Cruella is seen as like the dark version of her, the bad version of her that is like cruel and mean to people for no reason. And so the movie kills off the good version, has her assume the role of the bad version, frame her mother for her murder, send her to prison, take over her property, basically become her. And that's seen as like it treats that as like a moment of empowerment.
So what we need is a 101 Dalmatians sequel, which is really a sequel to this movie, where she redeems herself from this dark slide that she took toward evil.
I guess.
So they're going to get another movie out of this, is what I'm saying.
I guess. I mean, the movie ends with them sitting around the mansion that becomes Hell Hall from 101 Dalmatians. And Jasper, one of the two idiots that helps her murder all the puppies, who is like her friend in this movie, looks at her and says, "Okay, what's next?" And she turns to the camera and says, "I have some ideas." But like the ideas are to murder puppies. Like, it's treated as an empowerment thing, and it's hilarious. Like, this is, I refuse to believe the writers of this thing weren't self-aware with what they were doing with the absurdity of it. That's the part I love it on. Is like there's an undercurrent of this movie that is fully aware of how fucking ridiculous it is.
Sure, I'm sure it is. Although, I mean, I'm imagining watching this with my kids and them absolutely not catching that it's supposed to be absurdist, and
that is the problem, because you have to ask the question, who is this for?
It's for the people who watched 101 Dalmatians when they were kids.
I guess so. I mean, I think there's gonna be like a 16-year-old boy or girl that's just really into fashion that's gonna love this movie, right? Because the looks, the dresses, it's all really fucking wonderful. It really is. I don't even care about fashion, and I am like, damn, that's a good looking design. I really love it. So, I mean, people are going to get really into that for sure.
My kids really do like fashion, so
I don't know. I mean, our shared Disney Plus account already has it purchased, so all you have to do is just click play. Yeah. It is 2.5 hours long, which I think that's too long for this movie. I'm not one of those people that thinks all movies need to be 90 minutes, but I don't think this movie earns its 2.5 hour time.
Yeah. I mean, that's more manageable when you're at home, because then you can just pause it. So.
Sure. Yeah, but yeah, that's my review, I guess, of Cruella.
Yeah. All right.
I laughed a lot. That's what I'll say about it. I laughed a lot.
Okay. Sounds fun. Sounds nothing like what I expected.
No. The scene where Jasper is yelling at Cruella and saying, "I want Estella back." I'm like, but Jasper, you're the idiot one who hit the dogs on the head with the chair leg.
Yeah. You get duped by the puppies.
Oh my God, it's so wild. What a wild choice. I'm so glad they did what they did with it. Like, again, like if you thought The Lion King was like the death of art, which I don't agree with that, but I can understand that feeling. It's not like this is a wholly original thing either, but like I would much prefer them to do stuff like this than keep churning out like carbon copy remakes.
Right. I'll just convey to you that my 4-year-old watched the Lion King cartoon, and then she saw that the Lion King live action existed, so she watched the Lion King live action, and then she watched the Lion King cartoon again every day for 2 weeks. So, and she never went back to the live action. So just to comment on the staying power of the cartoon versus the other one.
I've actually not made it all the way through the live action one. I turned it on once, and then I didn't make it 30 minutes. It just doesn't look good. It's just like, I don't understand what they were doing with that one. I'm on the record of saying I enjoyed the Aladdin live action one. I thought that was a good movie, but the Lion King one just cannot keep my attention.
Well, what I dislike about it is like it only deviates from the script in ways that make it worse, which is, I think, almost the norm with a lot of these. But like,
sure.
Like the dialogue. Okay, so here's the thing. Just minor tangent. The dialogue in the Lion King is perfect. It is a razor sharp script. Every line in it is perfectly, like the comedy of it is excellent. Like just go back and listen to Zazu's report to Mufasa as an adult, and you realize that it's hilarious. Like it's just like 16 puns chained together, which none of which you would have got when you were a kid, right? Sure. But like the whole script is like that, and then in the remake they just fuck it up. It's just like, you changed it. I noticed you changed it. I don't know why.
Yeah, it is fascinating the ways in which they feel entirely like sworn to keep everything the same, and the ways in which they just toss out stuff and change it. Yeah. You know, like it's like the broad strokes are the same, but then they go in and tinker in ways to just say, "Oh no, we changed it." See,
right?
It's interesting. Yeah, that's a whole different conversation.
Yes, it is.
The point is, go see Cruella in theaters. Maybe I didn't. I watched it on Disney Plus because I have an infant. But go see Cruella.
Yeah,
I think it's worth it.
All
right, folks. That's all we had for you this week. If you have any opinions on anything we talked about today, please feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account @doofmedia.
If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
You can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. And of course, if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge at whatever level you can afford.
That's right. Also, please consider throwing us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Those really do help us get more exposure, and then more people see the show.
Yeah, I think before we go, just one final note. We brought a new podcast to Doof Media this week. Very exciting times. We brought Jenny and Malia, who are doing a podcast called Pale in Reflections, which is not about a book called Pale. No, it's about a book called Pact. But I see how you got confused there. But they are kind of doing what we've done with other Wild Bow shows in the past, where they're going through the book Pact chapter by chapter, episode by episode, but they're doing it from the perspective of people who have read Pale, his other verse novel, and have not yet read Pact. So it's a little bit of a different perspective there. And they are now part of our network, and we're very excited to have them. They're doing great work. So please give them a warm welcome and check out their show, Pale in Comparison, if you have not already.
Yeah, they definitely have a fun way of approaching the material.
Absolutely.
Really been enjoying it.
Yeah. All right, folks, we will see you all next week when we continue our Deconstructing Verbinski series with Pirates 2, Dead Man's Chest.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.